Welcome to the Halacha podcast Laman Yishmu with Harav Yosef Yeshaya Braun, Mara Da'asra, and a member of the Crown Heights Beis Din. This podcast is brought to you by the Ask the Rav platform in partnership with Laman Yilmedu, the premier institute for practical halacha learning.
Okay, so we got a very interesting question, which again about Tefillin and about Mivtza. In the siddur, before the section which talks about putting on Tefillin, is a small paragraph that says the proper Kavana that you're supposed to have when you put on Tefillin. Specifically, it says you should have in mind that Hashem told us to write 4 sections, 4 parshas in the Torah, which talk about the unity of Hashem, and how the Tefillin helps us remember the miracles that Hashem did when we came out of Mitzrayim. We put on our Tefillin that corresponds to on the hand corresponding to the heart, on the head corresponding to the brain. The idea of Tefillin is subdue our mind and heart to Hashem, and so on and so forth. That to think about this paragraph could take a while. It doesn't happen just like that on a whim. And furthermore, we go Mivtza, we don't even tell people that we're putting on Tefillin about this Kavana and how this is essential to the mitzvah of Tefillin. So the question is it really essential? Can you just put on Tefillin without thinking anything? And if you do have to have Kavana, then how do we justify the fact that people go Mivtza without any Kavana? So should you have Kavana? Yes, you should have Kavana. It shouldn't really take long. It should take a couple of seconds. You just have to think about the content of that particular paragraph, and it shouldn't take long. But it is not ma'akiv. It doesn't hold back from the mitzvah of Tefillin. You could still fulfill the mitzvah either way. Now, this particular issue was addressed in a letter. Rav Hutner wrote a letter to the Rebbe about issues about Mivtza and that people don't have the proper Kavana. The issue over there was other aspects of the mitzvah of Tefillin, which I'm not going to go into right now, but the Rebbe does address this particular issue in passing. And this is based on a Bach. The Bach writes that in order to fulfill the mitzvah of Tefillin properly, if a person does not have in mind the intention that we just spoke about, he mentions this both in regard to Tefillin, and he mentions in regard to Tzitzis, he mentions this in regard to Sukkah, then he really hasn't done the mitzvah properly, which really raises an issue that people are not keeping the mitzvah properly. So the truth is, if you look carefully in the words of the Bach does not write that he hasn't fulfilled the mitzvah. The wording of the Bach is that loikim ha-mitzvah kitikuna. You didn't do the mitzvah the way the mitzvah should be done. That doesn't mean you haven't done the mitzvah at all. So it's the right way, the proper way of doing the mitzvah, but you still have fulfilling the mitzvah is still being fulfilled, number one. Number two, it's altogether not clear that we actually paskin, the halacha is actually like the Bach. At the time, besides for Rav Hutner writing to the Rebbe about the mitzvah of Tefillin, there was some people that came out with complaints about the Rebbe's Mivtza Tefillin many years before, and the Rebbe addressed many of the complaints, again addressing indirectly this particular Bach. The Rebbe spoke about the Sefer Ateres Kainim that writes that if people don't have the proper intention of Tefillin, then it's like as if they're wearing eitzim v'avanim, wood and stones. And again, the Rebbe says that's an added thing. That's not really what the mitzvah is all about. So yes, personally, should we have this in mind when we are doing the mitzvah Tefillin? Yes. Do we have to stop other people in the Mivtza? No, we don't have to. Moving on to another question. People have asked the following question. When people catch fish, often it happens that the fish just has some suffering for a couple of minutes. It takes a few minutes till it stops breathing. And the question is there a chiyuv to kill the fish as soon as it's caught? There are experiments that show that the fish suffer when they take them out of the water. The short answer is no, there's no such obligation. In fact, have a look what the common minig is. People catch fish. We never heard of such a thing that people have to cut off the head of the fish right after they catch the fish. Why is this not really an issue of Tzaar Baalei Chaim? So there's a couple of reasons behind it. First of all, there's no intention to give Tzaar, to give pain to the fish. It's a natural consequence. The Torah allows us to capture, the Torah allows us to kill. There's no chiyuv to go and put in the extra labor and go make sure to go and kill it right now. It's very different than the idea that if an animal is going through pain, there's a chiyuv to unload from an animal, and even if the animal is not yours, and if it belongs to a non-Jew. Here we're talking about it's a process that we're doing the process, and we don't have to add anything to the process. In fact, there is a discussion in Peskim. Chazal tell us in the pasuk "V'hafta l'reacha kamocha," to love your fellow Jew, "B'ror lo misa yafa," that you're supposed to choose even a person that's going to be killed because he's a rasha, wicked person, he's being killed through bezdin. You have to choose him a better form of death. But by a Baalei Chaim, by animals, this halacha doesn't apply according to some opinions. So that's another reason for leniency. Additionally, there's actually an advantage not to go and kill. We're not looking to have the habit of v'yadayim directly going and killing. It's not a healthy attribute to train ourselves. So people do catch the fish, but to go take a knife and afterwards cut and make sure that it gets killed, actually there's something to be said about that sensitivity. Never mind, there are opinions that say, going back to the general question, that when it comes to killing, there is no such thing as Tzaar Baalei Chaim. Tzaar Baalei Chaim is causing pain which is in the process of killing. So whether that's the halacha or not, the Alter Rebbe doesn't hold like that, but that's just, again, another added perspective. The halacha is that you're allowed to eat fish, technically, you would be able to eat fish while they're alive, other than the fact that it's Baal Shaksu, it's an abomination, it's not a menschlich way of doing things. Technically, you'd be allowed to do that. You're allowed to cut it piece by piece and eat it. So there's no reason why you have to go kill the fish right when it comes out of the water. There also is an opinion altogether that there's no Tzaar Baalei Chaim with fish. The reality is that people today use all different types of methods of killing the insects at home, even though that does cause pain, and they don't have to go afterwards and take a hammer and kill the roaches and mice, etc. I will just point out that the Gemara says a mashal about learning Torah, that we are associated with Torah like fish in the water, that when fish come out of the water, they right away die. You cannot be without Torah. The expression of the Gemara is that fish, when it goes into dry land, miyad mason, they die right away. In some places, the expression uses they can't live a rega. It's brought in Chitas that way. They can't live a moment without being in water. So that implies sort of that they die right away. So, as we mentioned earlier, that there are studies that show that they actually do have some life and some suffering. So obviously this type of little breathing that they're still having is not a form of chayes. If you put them back into the water, that reveals that originally they were alive all along. The Rebbe actually once spoke about it, that the message from this is the idea of tshuva, that the person could be killed. Technically, when you take the fish out of the water, Chazal says it's dead. But you could put it back in the water, it's going to come back alive. So that's the message, the idea of tshuva, that a person could cut himself off from Hashem and they could reconnect. There isn't a similar idea that often with animals, after the shchita, the nerves are still operating even though it's dead. And in Svarim, the Rikanti writes that it's command the lesluch. It's as if they have no life. Since they will eventually die by themselves, that's not considered life, and therefore we don't have to be concerned with Tzaar Baalei Chaim. I'm going to move on to another question altogether. People often ask this question. We have the daily study of Chitas and the daily study of Rambam. Can we do the Chitas and the Rambam the night before? And we'll soon see there's this question also about general shiurim that people have. But let's first start with Chitas and Rambam. So someone actually asked this question to the Rebbe about Chitas. The question, the way he phrased it, was that he already learned the Chumash the night before. He wants to know if the next day he has to repeat it. The Rebbe answered a 3-word answer, Lo shamaiti bezeh. I didn't hear anything about this. Meaning the Rebbe didn't give a definitive ruling. If the fact that he learned Chitas the night before means he fulfills the obligation. Lo shamaiti, I didn't hear. Certainly, the implication here is that certainly a person should not rely lechatchila and go and learn the night before. The question over here is if you have to learn it over again, and that the Rebbe said Lo shamaiti. Somehow it's accepted that Rambam could be started the night before. We'll talk about that in a moment. I will just mention in general, Shiurim, Chitas, like most Shiurim, is a good idea. The right time to learn is after davening. Tilim, as part of Chitas, B'chlal, we don't say at night. If it's before midnight, Chumash could be said at night if it's said with Rashi. That's just a general comment. Now, this idea that the Rebbe's answer Leishamaiti, because it's a printed answer and the Rebbe printed in many places, but there are sikhs where the Rebbe spoke about this as well, that when it comes to night, it's not the time to learn the shiur of the next day, it's a time to catch up the shiur from the night before. Sometimes the Rebbe did use the term b'meshech ha'me'es le'es, learn the chumash in the 24-hour cycle, but he didn't say how this 24-hour cycle operates. Could be day and then night, which is unlikely, but the Rebbe did use that expression, mes le'es. There were times the Rebbe spoke about the two shiurim. The one time the Rebbe spoke about the Monday shiur and the Tuesday shiur. And he said it's the Monday shiur from the previous day, because now is the night after Monday. And it's the Tuesday shiur for tomorrow. So he spoke about tomorrow's shiur, and it says the shiur for tonight, because we have both system of the day preceding the night and the night preceding the day. I'm not sure if the Rebbe was talking about learning Chitas the way, when the Rebbe clearly spoke about not to learn the shiur for the following night. So when the Rebbe used that term, it means that tonight starts today, that tomorrow we're going to be learning the Chitas. Why am I saying Rambam is different? Rumor has it is a Meiser Rav that the Rebbe would learn Rambam the night before. In fact, the Rebbe did speak about Rambam. The implication of their bid is about Chitas too, but the Rebbe spoke in Hayeshayin Rabbi Sicha about learning Rambam in the Zelbet Chav Dal Shoyes in the 24 hours. Other mitzarav zayin the laila shalachrizeh. So when he said before 24 hours, he didn't mean the laila shalachrizeh the night after. He gave two options: learning within 24 hours or the night afterwards. So often the Rebbe spoke also about a lesson of Rambam, of tomorrow's Rambam. But again, that the Rebbe did about Chitas also. But it seems there's a clear difference between Chitas and Rambam in terms of the takana. It's a very different takana. Rambam is not studied on Tisha B'Av. Chitas, our meaning is we do study it on Tisha B'Av. Rambam is more a form of Talmud Torah, of Limud HaTorah. Chitas, the Rebbe spoke about that the takana of Chitas was nothing to do with the mitzvah of Limud HaTorah. When the Rebbe spoke about the takana of Rambam, he clearly spoke, it does have to do with the mitzvah of Limud HaTorah, of learning the halachas of Kala Torah Kula. So that could be an explanation for room for a slight difference. This is a general halacha that we find in Shulchan Aruch, that it says if a person didn't finish their shiur, that they have a choy kavu, a set fixed schedule of learning, they should finish it the following night. They must finish it the following night, because if you have a shiur, a fixed shiur every day, that becomes like a neder. Now the poskim don't talk about the night before. They say if you have a shiur for the day, you can finish it the following night. What about the night before? So why could you finish it the following night if it's a neder when you missed your neder? And why after the following night? You want to make up maybe the next day. So the Chaim writes, and this is in the Shulchan Aruch, that you're supposed to finish your shiur the following night, because Torah is like Herbanis, that the night follows the day. Well, if it's like Herbanis, the night follows the day, that implies that you can't do the night before. So this could be about any shiur, Daf Yomi shiur, shiur Gemara, shiur Chassidus. You have a fixed amount that you learn every single day that you can't do the night before. Rabbeinu Yoina in Brachas, right? It seems like he associates the shiur that you have with Birchas HaTorah. Birchas HaTorah you make in the morning, and then exempts you until when you go to sleep. Why is that? Because when you wake up in the morning, you have to start learning until you go to sleep. So if that's the case, the night after is a continuation of the previous day. That could explain that we find in Sefer Yosef Oimitz, an earlier Sefer, he talks about people starting to learn their shiur already early in the morning before Leis HaShachar. And we were saying that there's a question if you could do the shiur the night before. No, that's very different, because that's after the person went to sleep. He already can make Birchas HaTorah. We make Birchas HaTorah even before the break of dawn. So after he went to sleep, it already starts a new day. So all of this would imply seemingly the night before is not included. I don't think that's correct. The Rebbe did say that about Chitas. That is true, that you shouldn't learn it the night before, because that wasn't how the takana was made. But b'chalal, if a person has a set shiur, although you can make up the neder the night after, that's an extra thing you can make up the night after, but certainly the night before is part of the day. So let's just examine this a bit. The idea that the night before is included, we actually have some proof from a pasuk. The pasuk, when it talks about learning Torah, says "V'gisa boy yoimam v'layla." Chazal say Perek Echad Shachris, Perek Echad Arvos. We always talk about the day and the night. That you could argue that's the lashon pasuk, but some people actually bring that that's the way Torah operates. Any mitzvah which you have to do all along, it starts Torah. You have to learn non-stop. It starts from when you wake up until when you go to sleep. So that would imply that the order is day and then night. However, if you look carefully, I quoted before from Rabbeinu Yoina was talking about not the idea of a neder, and not the idea they have a fixed amount. He says you're supposed to learn Torah. You didn't have a chance during the day to learn Torah at night. he's make up for the fact that he didn't learn Torah during the day. He's not talking about a fixed shiur, and there's a big difference between the two. How do you make up by night for learning Torah? You're supposed to learn Torah day and night. Well, how are you making up? So Mefarshim say, because the main idea of learning Torah is by day. By night you sleep, so you're taking away from your sleep. When a person sleeps, they're putter from all mitzvahs. Even though he's currently up at night, but he could have gone to sleep. So the Rabbi Yoina was talking about one idea, that you missed out learning during the day. And Shulchan Aruch is talking about a different concept. Shulchan Aruch was talking about people that have a shir kavua to learn Torah. And at that, the Kavana gives a new reason because of Kadashim, and we find the other Svarim. The Rebbe actually compared the idea of learning Chitas the following night like Kadashim. Because Rabbeinu Yoina it compares the Birchas Torah. So we're not going to say that after a person goes to sleep at night, they can't make up their shiurim anymore. No, we haven't heard of such a thing ever. We can say maybe after midnight you can, because people already could say brachas from midnight. Nish mistaber. Clearly, there's an implication all over. You can make up the shiurim the following night after sleeping and after midnight. The fact that Birchas Torah b'chlal, there's a difference between midnight. That's a Kabbalah thing. When we're talking about there is an advantage before midnight and after midnight. The Rebbe implied that somewhat. When we're talking about the idea of a neder, the idea is that you can make up the neder the following night. What's the idea of a neder? The person took upon himself, I have a kviyas, I want to have the kviyas for this day. But his kviyas was about this day, every day I'll have a certain amount I want to accomplish. But doing it earlier, what's the problem? I'm still accomplishing my amount. Idea of a neder, because it's the idea of Talmud Torah every day, and every day I'm taking a certain amount. But why would it be a problem to do early? That's not in a person's mind when he makes a neder. Even if you say that he can't do it a few days earlier, logic says the night before he should be able to. The Gemara says, the lashon of the Gemara about this is, you pay up by night. That means the learning is supposed to be done by day. Now, if the night is still associated with the previous day, why is that called paying up? Obviously, because night really belongs to the next day. But still, you could make up for it. It's a form of pay up. So it's not completely like Karbanis, that the night before has no connection, it's day and then night. It's also like Karbanis that we also have a pay time, not part of the mitzvah, that we do the following night. When we compare, the Rebbe speaks about Chitas on Tisha B'Av, and the Rebbe said, it's not mamish like Karbanis, we're comparing it to Karbanis, if it's better to do Chitas by day. So it's not directly mamish like Karbanis. Never mind, by Karbanis we find the idea also that sometimes the night before is part of the day. Just a similar concept that we find somewhere. There's a machlokes of a person does slichas, if he's supposed to, the chazan for slichas is supposed to daven all the tefillos throughout the day. It's not the meaning today anymore. All the tefillos throughout the day means shachris mincha, the previous ma'ariv or the subsequent ma'ariv. The Matar Ephraim says they should do both. So you see, you can have ma'ariv before and ma'ariv after, and they're both included. And in fact, I found that the Pesach Hadvir writes this very, very clearly, that although you could make up the night after, but you could also do the night before. And people say a story that when they started the kviyas of Daf HaYomi, the Gerer Rebbe, the Imre Emes, came the night of Rosh Hashanah, was the first day of the Daf HaYomi, and he came and he announced, he started learning, he announced all the chassidim, he started to do Daf HaYomi. But when did he start the night before? And I don't think anybody's particular about this, about not starting the night before. So we have from our Rebbeim about Chitas, what we have, but we don't have to add what we don't have. I'm not sure if it has halachas of a neder, even if you say you can start the night before. Do you have to wait till it's nightfall? Can you start from Shkia? Do we have to look at Lashon Marei Adam? I'm not sure. I don't have clarity about that. Maybe you do have to wait at nightfall because it's a suffix in a din of a neder, which normally is a suffix in a neder. You have to be machmer. Let me move on to another question altogether. There's halach that one is not allowed to be shoyel shalom be'isha. Ask a woman how she's doing. So the guy is meeting a girl for shidduch purposes, for a date. So he's not supposed to ask her, how was Shabbos? How are you? I mean, how does that work? So a lot of places can talk about this idea that the specific issue is, first of all, using the word shalom. And even if we say that if you don't use the word shalom, it's also a problem, but the question is, the specific question, mash loimech, how are you? But just to say, how was your Shabbos, that's not a problem. Any standard everyday greetings that do not convey a message of affection or closeness wouldn't be a problem. Never mind the place can say, even saying mash loimech, today's day and age, just a normal way of expression, that's not a problem. Specifically with a woman, a person is going for a shidduch, she's not an ishes ish, she's a pnuya, so it's much less of an issue. There's an expression in the Gemara, hakel Hashem shamayim, it's being done just to be a mensch, just as a form that Maram Shik says, as it is that people are makel in the din of shila shalom be'isha, because l'shem shamayim, everybody knows there's no intention of affection or close, just the way that people talk, and that Kavana is only l'shem shamayim. Certainly when it's considered insulting and offensive not to talk that way, there really shouldn't be any problem, and indeed that is the minig. Just to bring a proof of that, it says in Peskin that giving matanas, giving presents, is a form of shila shalom. So if that would be the case, people would not be able to give presents chassan to a kala, and clearly there's no problem of a chassan giving a kala presents. That's been the minig all along. It's the current minig. It's mentioned as Svarim. The Rebbe spoke about specifically that there is a minig to give presents, but they shouldn't give a ring. So there's nothing wrong with giving a presents. Obviously, there's no problem with the present form of shila shalom, because it's not the same level of chibah when it comes from a chassan to a kala. Everybody knows why it's there. Moving on to another question altogether, in a different area altogether, in the area of hilchos brachas. There's a shita of the Rashba, which the Rambam brings lahalacha in Shulchan Aruch. The Rashba says that if you make a bracha on a fruit, you do not exempt a fruit which is more chashuv than the fruit you made a bracha on. So let's use the term chaviv for chashivas. Chaviv is something that you like better. You made a bracha on an apple, and you like the mango better. And we're not going to go into the details of what's considered chaviv right now. So the bracha on the apple, the eitz, will not exempt the mango, because the mango is more chashuv. Unless you have kavana, that it should go on the mango also. So normally we say if the fruit is in front of you, it's good enough. No, here it's not enough that fruit is in front of you. There has to be kavana, and it seems like it's not just enough that the fact that you had in mind to eat a mango. You have to have specific intention that your bracha should exempt the mango. That's a big chiddush of the Rashba, and the Rambam brings it down l'halach, and a lot of people are not aware of it. So the question I was asked was, it specifically mentions something which is more chashuv. Einoi chashuv cannot exempt something which is chashuv. Do we say the same about shalim and prusa? We know in the halacha, something that's complete is more than something that's half. So if you make a bracha on a half apple, will it exempt a whole apple? Would that be the case? So the short, brief answer is, there is a machlokes if this halacha of the Rashba would apply for a shleim and a prusa, a whole item and a half item. There's a lot of proofs that the Rashba's halacha will not apply over there. A bracha on a slice can exempt a whole item. Certainly, b'diavad after the fact, we're going to rule like that too. So, let's try to explain the root of the question. The question is by a whole item and a half item, a big item and a small item. Is the Rashba's halacha apply on something which has a din kedima, which according to halacha you're supposed to make a bracha first, on something which is a din kedima because of external reasons or because of internal reasons? The Alter Rebbe brings the halacha of the Rashba that if you make a bracha on pasta, for example, you will not cover your cake, because cake is more chashuv than pasta. How's it more chashuv? Cake, if you eat a kvi yisuda fixed meal, could turn to hamaitzi because it's baked. Something that was cooked does not turn into hamaitzi, so the cake is more chashuv. The pasta will not exempt the cake. It's not clear what's the pshat in the Rashba's shitta. The Aruch HaShulchan says that the Rashba was only talking about Talmidei Chacham that know which thing comes first in the order of brachas, because the person didn't want to go against the rules of Dina Kedim, what comes first. And well, if that's the pshat, then it applies anything that comes first according to halacha. A whole item comes before a half item. But the Aruch HaShulchan is a massive chiddush, it's not the pasha pshat. So, is there really a reason to distinguish between something whole and something which is chaviv? Something which is chaviv, the thing itself is more chashuv. Whole is a din of the bracha. You're supposed to be making a bracha covered for the brachas on something whole. Do we have a source for this in Peskin? So in the Gemara, it seems to imply very clearly you can make a bracha on psisim or poiteres hashleim. You can make a bracha on slices, and you cover a whole bread. It's since prusas and shleimas are very normal things. People have slices, people have whole foods, and it doesn't say anyway that it doesn't exempt it. So this is a massive chiddush to say it shouldn't exempt it, that the shit of the Rashba would apply here. So I found a Sefer HaFlo, which was printed from a Ksav Yad, and he actually proves in the Gemara that a prusa could exempt a shleima, even though it's more chashuv. He doesn't say clearly it's talking about with kavana. Without kavana, seemingly he was talking about even without kavana. A few reasons to explain why it should work is, first of all, whenever you're eating, every shleima breaks. So if your shleima breaks, that means it's automatically going to turn into a prusa. Also, a whole food includes in it a slice. We have a klal yesh b'chlal masai mana, 200 includes 100. So when you made a bracha on the slice, you made a bracha on the slice which is within the whole food. A chashuv food doesn't include in itself a non-chashuv food. Also, the whole food you could always break. So how can you say that the slice will not pater the shlema? It technically could be broken. So the modern day poskim talk about this. The Shulchan Torah actually writes this halacha applies also for prusa and shlema, but in the Rishonim it seems to imply not like that, unless these Rishonim don't hold like a Shitas Harashba. But there is a very, very important thing that I want to bring up about this whole entire halacha. Although there's such a Rashba, the Netziv and the Aruch HaShulchan write the minig is not like the Rashba. People don't have this custom. People make a bracha on one food and it covers the other food also. And it doesn't seem to me they follow the Rashba. The Alter Rebbe is Mechadish actually, although the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch brings the Rashba as a halacha. In Luach B'Chsanen he brings the Rashba as a halacha. In Seder B'Chsanen he brings the Rashba and says Yesh Chelkin. He doesn't say who he's talking about. Some disagree. We don't know who he's talking about. It's not clear. The Alter Rebbe says try to avoid this issue. You should always have in mind special kavana to exempt it. He doesn't say what happens if you didn't have in mind. B'di'evid, the Rabbi Braun Chaim writes that b'di'evid safek brachas lahakol, don't make another bracha. We can add another point that b'di'evid, after the fact, there's always going to be an opinion that says the other food comes really first. So b'di'evid, you can always rely on another opinion. Just a bit of a complicated case. I just thought I should mention that. I got a question from a Chashuv Rav, and quite a few Rabbanim were involved in discussing this topic. A very interesting point. One of the big questions people have today is mourners going to weddings. It's very hard for many people that can't come to a simcha. So there's a solution, seemingly a good solution for everyone. The Ramah says that if somebody tells his family not to keep Avelos for him, Shiva, Shloshim, they shouldn't listen to him. Says the Shach, if he says don't keep Avelos for 12 months, which is only something of Kibbud Av, only a father or mother people mourn for 12 months, then you should listen to them. So a simple solution would be that people should in advance be moichel and say they're okay with their children going to simchas. Now, maybe it wouldn't be such a good idea to come up with these ideas, but if so many people are having this problem all the time, it'll avoid a mikshel. Is there a problem with such an idea? And you can't say that people, when they're alive, can't say they're moichel. It says befeinish that they can be moichel. Now, over there, it's talking about not to keep avelos altogether. Here, we're talking about a specific thing. Not, they should be able to go to chasnas. But we find that even there's a case brought in the Marik that a mother told her daughters a specific thing they shouldn't do, like a veil cover, wrap their heads around. She wasn't meichel on everything. It seems like that would work. I know of a particular Talmud Chacham who wrote in his Savad that he allows his children to go to simchas, one brother to another brother, that's his covered. Harav Yashiv said that the reason why a lot of people are lenient today because that's part of the father's prefers when the children come to each other's simchas. That's a massive chiddush. The father didn't even write that in his Savad. He didn't say he was meichel. That we can just assume so. That's a massive chiddush. I think most people don't pass like that. All the shilas and solutions about going to chasnas means that all the Rabbanim today do not follow this position, and I don't think Rabbi Yashiv and his family did that either. Reb Moshe Feinsher was asked about a married woman, and he says she has to give respect to her husband. She can go to a simcha because her husband comes first. This is a simcha, the husband's side of the family. There was a story with a child whose mother passed away. His father's getting remarried, and some people said he could go to the chasna because the reason not to go to the chasna is kibbud aim. The reason to go to the chasna is kibbud av. Kibbud av comes first. So Ramesha looks at it as like a regular kibbud av aim issue. Although the reason for mourning 12 months is because of kibbud av, but it turned into a halacha of avelis. So maybe this doesn't follow the regular rules of kibbud av aim. And we find that Paiskim use the regular rules of Avelis for 12 months. Avelis, not the rules of Kibbud Aveim. The expression in Paiskim is the Avelis of 12 months is Kalsha B'Kalma, one of the lightest things in Halacha. If this would be Kibbud Aveim is Chamudish, and Chamudish is quite severe. But at the same time, it seems like it follows the rules of Kibbud Aveim that the parents could be Meichel. So, some people suggested that maybe even if a father is meichel, there's still a mitzvah to keep kibbud avim. So why would people throw out a chance for a mitzvah? But that we could answer. They could do other mitzvahs. They could learn mishnayos. They could do good things. Why should they dafka do things that cause so much difficulty and challenges? And if the parents say b'feish, I want you to come to the simcha, they'll be mekayim a mitzvah kibbud avim. Some people said that maybe the person that passes away loses out, that they're not really doing proper avelis. It's highly unlikely that we would say they would lose out. This is an avelis of 12 months, which is for his covered, and It's only a in of a minig very often. And who says this person is losing out? Maybe he's gaining because of that. So some people said that this is a system of boycotting and avoiding keeping halachas of Torah, so maybe that's not the right way how to do things. But if people are anyhow not keeping these halachas, maybe it's actually a good idea. The other svara, some people said it's marasai. Nobody knows the father was meichel, not meichel. People know he's a oval. People won't know. It's hard to use that argument because the shach says if he's meichel, then it works. What about marasai? Maybe people don't want to talk about us when they're still alive. That could be. Maybe because they think there'll be a zilzal in the tzibur. I don't know, but this is an interesting question why people haven't used this approach of meichel in advance. Just putting it out there. Like I said, I do know a certain Gedolei Yisrael that wrote that in that Tzava, but that's not a common approach. Don't want to finish with the issue of mourning. One more final question. People often are davening, and people are non-stop asking them for tzedakah, and it makes davening difficult. And it is a fact, it's very hard to concentrate in davening when people are stopping with tzedakah, being bombarded all day long. You're learning davening at home. So the truth is, if you're in the middle of a mitzvah, even busy with your children, which is also a mitzvah, you don't have to do another mitzvah. The only mitzvah that you have to stop is if you're in the middle of learning. Learning, we don't say mitzvah, you have to stop in the middle of learning for a mitzvah that no one else could do. But if you're doing other mitzvahs, you actually don't have to stop. There is a mitzvah loisas of yoshev al yoshev dach nichlam, that if you can't let a person go empty-handed, but there's not that mitzvah loisas. Again, we're talking in the middle of a mitzvah right now. Number two, that mitzvah loisas does not apply for somebody who's collecting for others. Often the mashulach comes to the door, he's not collecting for himself. So I'm not letting him go empty-handed, humiliated. I'm letting the third party go empty-handed, humiliated. So to begin with, it wouldn't be a problem. But a lot of people have done is when they're davening, they put down money in advance, and they allow the Gabbai Tzedakah to come and take money himself like this. They won't be disturbed from davening. That's a very, very good solution.
Join the global halacha learning revolution of the Laman Yilmedu Institute and bring increased brachos into your home. For details about the various learning programs, visit our website, lamanyilmedu.com. That's LEMAANYILMEDU.com.